I'm running from it, 'cause I can't face it, and I can't force a smile tonight. I'm on a ride, I gotta ride it out inside. Control on the road to find new lows. I'm moving fast, but learning slow. Everybody seems to know something I don't know. I strung the string, so let me strum it. I'm feeling dumb, so won't you dumb it down for me? Control on the road to find new lows. I'm moving fast, but learning slow. Everybody seems to know something I don't know. Still fake it, we had it made. I couldn't make it, my heart can bend, but she still breaks it every time. Control on your own to find new lows. I'm burning fast, but moving slow. Everybody seems to know something I don't know. It's something I don't know. It's something I don't know.
Hey, how's it going, everybody? I'm Ben from Universal Audio, and welcome to a very special UA Live episode. We're going to be diving into the live streaming broadcast setup that YouTuber Rhett Shull has put together to be able to broadcast out of his basement to the world and be able to still perform and enjoy playing music with his friends and peers during quarantine. And of course, Apollo and Luna have a huge part of making this all happen. So we thought it'd be really fun to break that down with you guys here today. And to do that, not only did we bring along Rhett Shull, we also brought along Andy McDonald to help break down the setup. How you guys doing today?
Good, man. Thanks for having us. This is awesome.
Yeah, really looking forward to this. And hopefully everybody's already checked out the live shows. But I just got to say, man, I'm super impressed with what you guys are pulling off. And, it's also cool, too, right? Because you've kind of shown behind the scenes of putting together this whole process and, from the idea of I want to do this to now executing it. And then every time you guys do a show, you're adding in new elements and upping the production each and every single time.
Thanks, man. It started off as like a kind of a fun idea of, man, yeah, we can't play any shows or tour or anything like right now, but what if we just got some people together? I've got the gear, I've got a couple cameras and some stuff. And it started there and quickly exploded to this massive production and, 8 cameras and a full UA setup and outboard gear and monitor set. I mean, it's a pretty crazy system we put together. So yeah.
Just all just to play some tunes with some friends, right?
Yeah.
Nice. So, let's talk musically here for a moment. So, these are all kind of players that you've toured with or played with locally. Like, how'd you guys all get together?
So I've known the guys in the band, Portier on keys and vocals, Philip Conrad on bass, and Chad Collins, but we all call him Chadman.
Mm-hmm.
I've known these guys for years. So Philip and Chad, I went to music school with here in Atlanta about 10 years ago. And I've gigged with them and toured with them ever since. And Portier and I have been writing and producing together for the past few years and playing together. And so this is literally my dream band. Every guy that I picked, and Andy, who helped us build this whole system and is mixing the show and running everything for us. This is my dream team in every aspect. So they're some of my best friends, some of my closest friends. I've traveled the world with these guys. I've played hundreds of gigs with Phil and with Chad. And so it just made sense. And literally the first time we got in the room, like we've still only played together less than 10 times between all 3 shows and all the rehearsals and everything. We're still a very new group. But the first time we got in the room together just to test out the system, it wasn't even a full rehearsal.
Mm-hmm.
We got together and it immediately just clicked. And it made a lot of sense.
Wow. And so, Andy, how'd you get involved with this process?
So I've known Rhett a long time, through other gigs and friends and we worked together on some live shows, in front of audiences. And
Oh, what are those things? Remind me again. I don't quite remember.
Yeah. So he asked me. We were trying to kick around some ideas, and as we were doing it, like everything was changing. It's like, we got this, and we can work with that. We had some components already in the room, for like a home theater or a live show setup. So we leveraged some of that, and it's like UA is in. We got this. Okay, let's think about it again. It's been really fun.
That's really cool, and it's as people, I'm kind of showing a little preview of the last show here. The setup is no slouch. Like this is you guys. This isn't some just like basement studio stuff. You guys have kind of really elevated the setup here. So you want to walk us through essentially, how you've put this whole rig together. And then of course, we'll kind of, we're here to geek out about, how you guys have set this up. So I know you've got a nice little diagram to kind of give us the overview of how things are going to come together, but then we can dive into actually the console. And also it's interesting how you're using Luna, because the mix that people are hearing going to air is all processed and done inside of Luna in real time, which I think is very fascinating.
Yeah. So, as an engineer, I feel like we like diagrams. So I had to make one, mainly so that I could see it and then actually think about it when it was time to remember what we did.
Mm-hmm.
So this is what came out of that. So the right hand side is basically the control room / studio that Rhett's in now.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's this physical space, and that's where I mix the show from. And so this is the equipment that's over there, and everything on the left hand side is the actual live room, and we have a nice patch panel. There's some decent isolation between the rooms. I do mix still on in-airs just because there's some delay and all that sort of thing. So, so we bring in all of the instruments, all the inputs, through the patch panel into an actual outboard rack where we have some analog gear. So we have analog preamps there, compressors, EQs. Mostly the drums are running through those, and I think bass. And we got an extra channel there for synth bass that I guess coming soon. So haven't used it yet. So all of that comes into the patch panel here. We have a Midas M32C, which is a rack mount mixer. That's kind of part of the house system, if you will.
Gotcha.
And so having that already, we got some of the P16 personal monitor mixers that integrates with that directly. So we run, everyone has their own for that. Our cam op has one, so we can hear what's going on. Guest artists, we have several of them. So I've got one, so I can reference the monitor mix if I need to.
Nice.
So we have an expansion component of the M32 not pictured. That's a 16 preamp box, right? So it's 16 in, 8 out. So we use all 16 of those inputs there for some of the channels. And then we use the remaining inputs on the Apollo 8 XP and the preamps on the X4.
Gotcha.
And so it gets a little tricky because we're using all that at one time, and we're monitoring it all, and we're mixing it all.
So you've got you're combining. You've got, and we just had a good question here in the chat. How do you get all these instruments with only technically 12 Apollo inputs, and you're doing that with the 8 at in and out from the Midas is helping you along, right?
Yeah. So there's 16 preamps on the Midas that we're leveraging, right? So that's 16. We really get down to 28. These extra 4 are just returns, talkback coming in on a couple of channels, and some FX returns, which I'll talk about. So we got 28 pre's, and then this unit here can handle 32 channels as far as mixing for the monitor bus. So we have 16 channels on the monitor system, but we have to bus and mix those down to the 16 from what you see here. And so anything that comes into the Midas directly gets real simply monitored through those boxes and sent to those buses. And then we send 8 at out those 16 into the Apollo system, one coming in on one, and the 8 channels on one, 8 channels on the other. And then anything that comes in on the Apollos, so 8 pre's here, 4 pre's here, or any returns from the mix, go back via ADAT into the Midas. So we have an ADAT card on that we can do 32 in and out on. So we could even expand it a little more. Maybe it can do a little more than 32. So. Basic, and this is not, so the delay here, if we want to think about all of these are being combined for monitoring by the musicians, we haven't had any problems with, we're talking about, ADD conversion here, ADD conversion here, then it's digital back and forth. Any delay there could be the difference in the converters, which is not noticeable. So we have no issues with
that's the important part, right? Is what you guys are hearing in the live room. You don't want the drums coming through and sounding like a flam every time, or have what they're playing not connect.
Now we are clocking, right? So the master clock comes from Apollo, and the Midas syncs to it. So if there is anything, it is consistent. So.
Nice. And then I see you control the Midas with the remote. You control, and then the Apollos are also. So you must have quite a battle station set up there for yourself.
I need like a camera this way, I guess.
It was like the last show we finally got to see your face there in the background. But I think the thing that would blow people's minds is seeing what you're seeing, which is just a lot of knobs and screens.
You can kind of see it over the shoulder here. So it's basically just this desk, which is my normal like YouTube video editing recording station, and then the X8P and the X4 on the desk, and then his Behringer mixer is there as well. And then the other thing we have that's never pictured is a monitor that's coming directly from our camera switcher, so that, because obviously we don't have a window or anything to go from the control room to the live room. So Andy's getting a multi-view camera feed from the video switcher with program and preview and everything, so that he can actually see every individual musician and what's going on. He can see what the program, what the actual output that we're sending is,
Yep.
so that he can kind of be watching and see if somebody, needs something, or if I'm about to take a solo or whatever. He can kind of, see that in real time as well.
Nice. That must be super helpful, Andy.
Yeah, if I didn't have that, I'd be along for the ride, and it'd be a good time. So it gives me a little time to react to something.
Oh, totally. And you can also see them like waving, like, if something goes down.
We haven't really had that, which is good.
Knock on wood.
We tried to get that away. We do have a process, and I'd like probably mention it at some point. It'll make sense as far as how we actually approach this from a pre-production kind of point of view. But I feel we go through the technical first. But
yeah.
So yeah, this is it. This is kind of the layout. And our actual broadcast mix comes back from the Apollo X4.
Okay.
On a couple of the TRS outs into the XLR input on our switcher unit, and then we goes over to, actually we've changed from OBS to a new program, but we align the audio and video in that program.
Gotcha. So that's where the final hey, make sure snare drums in sync happens there.
Right. Exactly. Yes. And so we were the audio was behind the video for a while, but our latest mix, we've gone the other way. And so I think we're about 4 frames we have to delay the video at this point. But the fact that we have the capability and it works well.
Yeah.
Good to go.
Well, that's one thing a lot of people don't, especially when you get to this level of video production here, right? When you go from just using OBS and kind of the simple, single camera, single source, that's starting to do multiple sources and separating the audio feed from what's happening in the video. I can tell you guys from what we've been doing too for UA Live, like this is the constant struggle and battle of like, are all of our cameras in sync? Is the audio still good? Like managing all these things at once is no easy task.
I've gained a whole new respect for broadcast television in general. I mean, it's insane. I've learned so much about just these different standards and how to interface these different, we've got 7 cameras right now, 4 of which are Sony's, 5 are Sony's, 1 Nikon and 1 Blackmagic Ursa Mini, and trying to get all that not just synced up, but making them all look the same. And it's unbelievable.
It does take and of course, I mean, the good thing you guys have also, you're smart and put in place, is having a team of people to help you make this happen, right? Like trying to one man show this would be overwhelming.
It's impossible, actually. So I have to shout out Andy. Andy was the first person, after I pitched the band on this. I just sent out a text message, said, hey guys, here's what I want to do. Are you in? Everyone said yes. And then I talked to Andy, and Andy came on, first thing, and spent dozens and dozens of hours over here at the house helping us get this. I mean, we literally could not run this without Andy, and this setup and everything that you're seeing is solely him. I had no input on this whatsoever. I know my way around a studio. I would call myself I'm somewhat proficient when it comes to recording, but this is a completely
whole different level.
Thing. Yeah, and this is totally Andy's brainchild here. And then my dad has been great. He runs the camera switching. So when you're watching the show live, he's the man on the camera switcher switching in real time. And then my wife, Tilly, is basically the executive producer, director of the show. She's running the stream. She's firing the transitions. She's monitoring the chat. She's keeping us kind of flowing. So we've put together our own little broadcast team down here. And
you're gonna start your own TV studio, right?
I mean, that's basically what we've done.
Yeah.
Nice.
Well, so man, this is such a really cool setup to see. But of course, this is just the physical infrastructure for it, right? So this is kind of how all the inputs are getting. You're combining systems between the Midas, the using the Ultranet, the Behringer personal mixers, which is great, giving the musicians their own controls over that. But then you're still able to leverage the real-time processing of the Apollo, and then also Luna becomes a part of this, which I think which is super fascinating. How you're able to basically you're mixing the record in real time, essentially.
Right. Yeah. So there's some fun challenges there. So I'm sure we'll get to them.
Anything
All right.
else?
So should we
I was like, anything else on the with the setup diagram that we overlooked?
I don't think so. I think we could probably move to console unless there was a question specifically.
Yeah. They're wondering what you replaced OBS with.
Mimo Live, I think is how you say it.
Yeah, so we switched to Mimo, which is a paid program, and it's Mac specific, right, Andy?
No, I think it does both platforms, but I think it started on Mac, so it's optimized to work well.
Yeah, it's optimized for Mac, and we're using Mac for everything. We've got this is the iMac is what we're mixing and running Luna on, which you'll see in a second, and then our broadcast computer is a Mac Mini. And Mimo, I keep wanting to call it Mimo.
I like it.
It's Mimo Live.
Yeah.
We switched to that right before show 3. And that's the thing is every show so far, because this is still very new for us, we've only done 3 shows. Every show we've had one major change for every single show. So for show 3, Andy remixed pretty much the whole thing, and because there was a Luna update, and we're taking advantage of the ATR extension, which you'll see in a second. And then we switched to a completely new streaming platform. But the reason we did that was Mimo is so much more stable than OBS, and the feature set that comes along with it is just incredible. For what we're doing at the level that we're doing it at, it's worth the money. I think for us it's like $70 a month or something, and it's amazing.
Yeah, and that there's so many of the tools, like we've even highlighted a bunch of stuff that we use on our back end as well, like loopback and audio hijack, and some of these tools, like they're $100, but like they pay for themselves with the headache reduction that they give you. Yeah, is often worth the little bit of change.
Yeah.
Nice, awesome. Well, so man, this is quite a setup. So let's dive into the box and see how you're using console and Luna as part of this, because you're actually running both. You're using a bit of an atypical setup, and as far as like
absolutely,
most people when they're working in Luna, they're there to record, and they want to use advanced real time monitoring to be able to hear what they're doing coming back at them, and it's all about making the record version. But since you're not, the point here isn't necessarily for the multi-track recording; it's more for the live broadcast. You're kind of using both console and Luna simultaneously.
Yes. It's let me see if I can move this to my other screen so I won't be looking off to the side here this whole time. All right. Yeah, so this is our console session. And this is everything. Yeah, I think everything's here. A lot of things are stereo grouped, right? Or several things are. So this should be the full count. And some of these names are actually for what we did on episode 2. And this is evolving a little bit. So we mainly have some processing we're doing here on this vocal chain for Portier, who's most of the lead vocal duties. And so we have an interesting challenge, right? So this is not a normal studio setup. This is and even from a live studio setup, we don't have particularly great isolation. We're in a smaller room. We've done the best we can, but one of our microphone sponsors is Earthworks, who makes some amazing microphones that pick up things really, really well. And so it's a room full of condenser mics on everything, and including our lead vocals. And so we got a tighter pattern on that. A hyper-corded pattern on the vocal mic really helped. A lot of additional things we could do to try to keep the drum bleed out.
I hadn't even thought to ask you about how you deal with bleed, because it's not a huge room and everyone's kind of on top of each other.
We actually have a few different layers of protection, if you will. So the first thing was I bought a set of the clear sound baffles, the round drum baffles that you see a lot of drummers use live. They put them right in front of their cymbals. I bought a pack of 4 of those, and we have 3 of them in front of the drums, and then we have one directly in front of Portier's vocal microphone. The second thing was we reached out to Earthworks, who is our microphone sponsor, and we were originally using the SR314s, which are great and they look amazing on camera, but the pattern was just too wide. So on Jamie's vocal and on my vocal, we switched to the SR40V, which is the hypercardioid pattern, and that really cut down. We're still getting some bleed, but I mean it dramatically reduced the amount of bleed to make it usable. Before, we had the vast majority of our drum sound was actually coming through Portier's vocal mic, which wasn't ideal. So yeah,
I think it was one rehearsal where I walked out. I was like, "We got some work to do," and I got some panels. Bring them all.
Bring them all. We need all the help we can get.
Yeah, and then I've got some acoustic panels that we built years and years ago. Owens Corning 703 panels, just 2 foot by 4 foot panels, and so I pulled them all out of storage, and we have them stacked up against the piano and just kind of placed all around the room, just doing what we can to kind of make it work. You know?
There's a pair of Omni condensers in the piano.
Wow.
Right? Yeah.
Well, and I mean, I guess the thing for people who are thinking like, when you think Omni, right, you just think, oh, here's everything around it. But most importantly, it's proximity, right? It's so like if you have the Omnis inside the piano, they're this far away from the they're this far away from the source, whereas the drums are a few feet away. So that it's actually the relationship of the distance, right, between the source and your bleed.
Right, and you'll see. We'll get into some audio examples later. I think we've got it pretty manageable. And thing about Omnis is even things like off the alpha axis is not a colorization. Like it's actually very natural sounding.
Yeah.
I got some Omnis for room mics that do a great job there too. And the thing about that hypercordioid is its off axis is very clean, right? So we're not. It all actually works pretty well. So on Jamie's channel here, we an EQ that I modeled after just what I'd gotten from the mix perspective. So I did the mix, came back here, set this to help with that. Went with the older LA2,
the slow boat,
a little more vibey, and so Jamie likes a particular feel, and this really helps with that. Same thing with this oxide here, where we're actually pushing this quite a bit into a heavy saturation. And that's what he likes to hear in his monitor, so that's what we do. And we do something similar on the live feed too. And we actually on this latest episode we did it with the ATR 102, so we pushed that as an extension instead of this as a plugin, which I actually quite liked a lot. So
I think it's really important for people to know, if you look on the right side of Andy's screen right now, you see where it says insert effects. You're running this all in UAD monitor mode. So all the effects that are happening inside a console, this is all for the benefit of the musicians. This is all to give them to their ears what they need to hear. But then what you're pulling into Luna, which we'll get to in a minute, you're basically getting clean signals for each channel, and then you're able to do a 2-air mix that's different than what necessarily they're hearing in their ears.
Yes, that's correct. Yeah, and so these, we have basically some compression, some EQ. This was an acoustic guitar channel here that was real nice. So our workflow is this, and I think it's probably good to know, and it works really well. We have multiple rehearsals where we'll do multi-tracks. All right. And the idea is that after that final rehearsal, before or even after maybe dress rehearsal, if the timing works out, I'll take that to my studio and I'll mix the show for the live broadcast.
Yeah.
The idea is if that's what we get from musicians do the same thing, the mix should be the same, right? Now you're limited, right? You can't go change the gain structure or anything like that because
you're not going
to be what they give you, right?
Exactly.
So that's where some of the limitations that what you're doing in this is not the same sort of thing you would do. You have to think about it a little differently. But that allows us to have really good results as far as taking a second look at it, listening, seeing how it translates, and going from there. And I take what I do in that session and I can save it as a preset and bring that preset up here in console, and here's the compressor for the acoustic guitar, and now it's on your monitor, right? And that works really nicely. So a couple of more important things here. You mentioned the monitor. We have the sends. So this is it's important to know that flex routing, which is what you see down here, works on the X8, X8P, X16. It does not work on the X4.
Yep.
Or I would have just directly assigned these channels out to ADAT.
Yeah, it's one of the,
The other
one of
channels-
the advantages
yeah.
going with the rack is you get the
Right.
The possibility to be able to route and into and out all in low latency.
So, I find this out. It's in the manual,
Yeah.
it's there. But, Apollo, this system is actually, this project is what introduced me to it from actually using it. So I knew about it from the marketplace and all of that. I just hadn't used it yet. And so these are the sort of things you can find out real quickly, unless you've been told ahead of time. So
Yep.
realize that there's a workaround, and my workaround is let's use some Q buses, and I just sent this one to Q1 left and the next one to Q1 right and Q2 left, and there's nothing assigned right here because we're actually, that needs to be assigned. I'm sure it was.
Well, so you're assigning Q1 left, Q1 right, and then you can control where those physically get presented, right? Because typically the Q outputs on an Apollo, they're by default they're going to the headphone outputs on the device. But then what you're able to do is pull that up and actually send them to some lineouts as well, right?
Yeah, and I'm not sure why when I click this, it's not coming up, but it's right here.
Mm-hmm.
If
I wonder if it's shown up on the other workspace.
Oh, it's a little floating window, maybe. I'm not sure I've seen that happen, but I'm not seeing any of those show up. But the Q outputs, you can assign it to the ADATs, and that's how it's done.
Yep.
Another important thing to know is when you're going to use those Q buses, you have to send it off of the hardware piece that is the master monitor for the system.
Yep.
Right. So it doesn't physically come out another unit, even ADAT. All right. So that was
that's why as you'll notice you've got you can kind of tell just by looking at the top of your console window, you see the blue and the green lines. Blue is the X4, green is the X8P. So by putting the X4 first, that becomes kind of your primary monitor unit.
Correct. Yes. And yeah, you can just drag them around, which is the way you change that. And here's our assignments on the flex routing here. And anything that doesn't have the assignment, minus that guy, which should be, is actually just returns coming in via the ADAT.
Okay, and so those are ones that are the path to the musicians is all happening on the M32.
Correct. Yes. And they're coming back into the correct. So we're not using these as part of what they're hearing. They're hearing that directly from the
Gotcha.
M32. Correct.
Cool.
Yeah, so that's console. Things that we're going to do a little differently. I have that effects return that you saw from Luna on the diagram. That worked really well for a while until our mix got to the point where we added some more delay beyond processing, and it's a little long now for that to be super useful. So we're actually going to use some of the aux capabilities of console here, create some effects, and send that back to the same place it was being sent, and just replace that with something static and local here.
Yep.
So that gets the feel that everyone wants, and we can have it without delay, which is great.
Nice. There's a hard-hitting question here in the chat. What coconut water is Rhett drinking? The people need to know.
Hashtag not sponsored, but the C2O brand here. C2O, email me. I do need a sponsorship. The amount of money that Tilly and I spend on coconut water each month is obscene. So, and we have Josh Scott from JHS to thank for this addiction.
Spraying the disease of coconut water drinking.
I haven't tried it yet. I feel I'm safe.
Yeah,
we've been turning the band members onto it too. It's like people on their way out, like, oh, you want something to drink? Coconut water, and like I don't know about that. It sounds weird, and then they try one, and then now it's become like the most requested drink on breaks and when people leave the studio. So yeah,
there's no coconut water in the green room. What's going on?
Nice. All right, so the console setup. So yeah, again, hopefully everyone's following along at home. This is how they're powering the monitor mixes. This is how you're able to do some integrate both the pre's and the routing on the M32 Midas box along with the Apollos. And as the cool thing that we really haven't gotten to show on our office hour shows yet is this flex routing stuff that you're taking advantage of. And for people that have setups with Hearback or Aviom or the Power Play systems, flex routing, this is the tip right here of how to really power those systems effectively with an Apollo.
And from the musician's perspective, like, this has, I think, allowed us to really punch above our weight class when it comes to the monitoring setup. I mean, in my ears, it really does sound like, even though we're not directly monitoring the actual Luna session or the broadcast mix, we're essentially able to mirror what we have going on in the Luna session in real time with zero latency, which is it makes a huge difference, especially on the vocal performances. I sang a little bit on the first show, and I'm not a very experienced or talented singer, but being able to actually have the real time processing of the compression, the tape saturation, the slapback delay, the reverb, all that stuff in real time on your monitor bus without having to have a dedicated Digico monitor console or some big monitor engineer and the whole thing. That's been, from a musician's perspective, the best part of this setup, is being able to get all that real time monitoring stuff in.
Yeah, absolutely. So this is there's a question here in the chat asking, so the Midas inputs are going to Luna, get mixed and go back to the monitors? No, the Midas inputs, the stuff that's going into the Midas just stays in the Midas to go out to the headphone mixes. But then it is coming into Luna for mixing and then going to broadcast.
Correct. You would see them in the console here. As these channels, I realize this is stereo, so these first four are the ones that are coming to the X4 and going back 8 to the Midas. These 8 right here are the ones coming into the 8XP. 2 of these are stereo, going back to the Midas. Everything else is what's being received via the Midas via ADAT. Okay, and so that all of these is what I get to use to make the broadcast mix from. But as far as what has to be returned from from the Apollo gear here are these channels here that are specifically being routed for that purpose. It's important to know that these are a unity here, because this is not only the level going into Luna, it's the level going to the monitors. So you may notice on some of this stuff, my gain staging probably could use some attention. But some of this gets like set where, we get to the point where you can't change it because the mix is done, the monitor mix is done, broadcast mix is done. It's just going to be a little hot.
If you go too upstream and start changing the gain stage around, you've messed with a lot of places.
Right. Yeah. So that's where I could use a little help. That's okay. The nice thing is a lot of the stuff is driving a lot of the stuff we're doing. The sound that we're going for kind of does that, is what we want anyway. So
yeah, and I feel like we should address that. Like, the sound that we're going for is a very specific thing, and this is what Andy and I had discussions on for a few weeks before we really got into this. Was we were sending references back and forth, recordings. Here's records that I love, here's live performances that I love, this drum sound is really what we're going for. And really the sound is sort of that lots of color, lots of saturation, especially on drums and vocals. Really, some tasteful use of compression, not just as a utility, but actually as a a coloration technique. I mean, that's that's really kind of the sound that we were going for, and to be able to pull that off live on a YouTube live stream is something I hadn't seen or heard anybody do before, and I think it's a big part of our sort of brand, so to speak.
Oh, totally. And like, man, I checked out this last weekend's show, and the vibe that you guys are getting sonically on it matches. It's the visual vibe. It's a sonic vibe. Like, it gives you this really cool. It's got polish in the right way, as in like you're getting clarity and detail, both visually and sonically. But at the same time, it's got this haziness. It's got a little crunch. It's got something to it that it doesn't just feel sterile.
Yeah, and that goes along with just my taste and the taste of the band and Andy here. We like a lot of the same music and a lot of the same records, and typically most of our favorite records and sounds and mix engineers and producers, I don't lean towards the super polished sound very often. I don't like very clean, polished, pretty sounds. I like a little, screw it up a little bit,
Yeah. Yeah. some it's seen some shit.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, cool.
Nice. Cool. So let's mind tabbing over. Let's see how this now gets inside of Luna, because hopefully you guys are picking this up. So console's kind of operating, doing all this monitor mixing, and then Luna is operating on the other side of the rig. I think it's the Zoom screen share, because I'm still seeing console.
Okay. All right.
Maybe have it share the whole desktop. This would probably explain why we couldn't see the queue window either.
Okay, yeah, because overlay.
It tries to only. It's like, hey, you want to see this one window? That's all you get.
All right, stand by. Desktop. And... Okay.
There we go.
Nice. Okay.
There we go. Now we see it. Now we can see Luna.
All right, so I'll walk you through this session. I don't have any audio examples in this session. We'll switch back to mine. I'll show you that. There was a reason why, but it had to do with not actually hitting record for the show. So,
You had one job to do, Andy. One job. Actually, you had like 10 jobs to do.
We got done with the show on Saturday. We came in. It was all, everyone's like amped up, and we just finished. And he was like, "Yeah, man, great show. I forgot to record it." It's like, that's fine. We have it.
It's on YouTube.
It's on YouTube.
Exactly. Right
It's there.
As long as you got the board, as long as you got that solid board mix at the end, right?
Yeah.
You're fine.
We're cooked in, man. We're committed. Yeah.
Exactly.
Right, if you could do the remote control for me. So
Oh.
I got that late.
There we go.
All right. So just let's see. I'll expand this. Yeah, there we go. Kind of left to right. I feel like as natural, right? All of our inputs. I have it in blue for those that are coming kind of direct from the Midas via ADAT, and red that are coming via the Apollo gear.
Okay.
The reason for that is I need to signify, hey, don't move these. Right?
If you mess with these levels, it messes the levels going out.
Right. And so there is actually a couple of things I forgot to mention. There's something called isolate in console that we will turn on. We turn it off to recall the session. We turn it back on, and that means if I were to do anything plug-in wise here, it would not try to input that in the console or change it. You can see the plugins I have in the console up here in the record slots. I can actually change them from here. I don't normally do that because I try to keep that set.
Yep.
But that's why. In fact, some of these first slots are not filled in, right? First four are what would show up, I think, in the bottom section of console. The top four would show up here, and then there's some extra space down below that's kind of Luna only.
Yeah. Well, and the important thing, the mode that gets you into this kind of split, this is almost like a split console sort of workflow. There is a mode inside of Luna called console tracking mode that literally is what creates the workflow here that you're able to use.
Yep. ARM is off, console tracking mode is on. We isolate those tracks, and then everything works great.
Yep.
So yeah, drums coming in here on the left. We've got lots of compression, some nice API EQs. I think we ended up putting a distressor here on the overhead. This is the tape saturation on the channels. So I have this. I'm going to show you the mix that we did from episode 2, where I had turned up. I really hit this pretty hard to get some of the drum sound. I actually turned on the ATR for this mix for the drum bus. So we're running this on the channels, we're running this on the bus.
Yeah.
And I had to dial it back to get a nice little happy medium between them, but I liked them both. And so I think it was kind of a little more modern tape there. And, just dialed it into the point where it was actually really good. So you can go reference that on YouTube.
Yeah. You can hear the results for yourself.
Yeah. And so interesting, you were like, okay, we got a lot of channels, but we didn't end up with a lot for drums. So we have kick, 2 snares, because that was the choice.
He has two snare drums, or is it 2 snare mics?
2 snare drums. Yeah. Check out the last tune, or any of the tunes, honestly. Chad has been doing some amazing things on the drums.
Yeah.
And his choice of 2 snares was a good one, because 2 toms works just fine. Don't really need 3 if you can do this. Yeah, it's really cool.
And what's for people who haven't seen that episode yet, the second snare, is it like a smaller piccolo snare, or is it like a deeper?
It's a low tune, deeper snare.
Nice.
I don't know the exact model. We're using a Sonar kit. It's actually Chad's kit, and so yeah, he's got the. I actually don't remember what 2 snares he's using. One is a Sonar snare. His main snare is a Sonar, and then his other one is a wooden. I can't remember. It's a vintage wood snare, and he's got it tuned super low, and it sounds sick.
Yeah, that's you love that having the chance to go deeper, right, with the snare.
Right.
Yeah, that's killer.
And some of the stuff he's doing, I mean, he'll turn snares off, and you got a whole nother drum kit, you know, and yeah. So there's some really cool stuff there. So and then the second episode, we actually had a guest drummer. So
so you had two drum sets. You had to mic two drum sets.
No,
well, we had one drum set.
Yeah, we had a transition, which took a little creativity. We ended up pre-recording a little segment of me and the band driving in I've got a 73 Ford LTD Brougham 2-door, brown on brown. It's the most 70s thing you've ever seen. But we recorded a little segment of us kind of talking about the transitioning. And so we started the show with just the band, and then we brought in our guest artist, who was Noah Guthrie, and his brother Ian Guthrie on drums. And so we had just the funny thing is as good a drummer as Chad is, he's as equally great organ and keys player. So he jumped over to, we have a Nord organ. Well, he has a Nord organ. So he jumped over to organ. Ian jumped in on drums. Noah came in, and we finished the set as like this hybrid band.
That's awesome. I'm always so jealous of especially the drummers who can come in and just like be monster key players as well, and then you hand them a bass and you're like, oh great, you can do that too, thanks.
Yeah,
awesome.
It's not fair.
Right.
It's
not fair at all.
So this worked out great because they each had the snare they wanted to use for the tunes, and so we just clip on. It was great. It was already set up, and actually we processed them a little differently for them.
Yeah.
But all of us ended up being a mono overhead mic, which. Hey, it was kind of the sound we were looking for anyways. Yeah. And we just hard panned the toms to give a little width there. No gating or anything. And
I was going to say, so this way you're getting a little sauce from the drums on both sides, but it's very center focused.
Right. And we do have a room mic that gives a little bit of that too. So a stereo pair of Omnis that are in the room that gets. So there's definitely a little motion there, but mostly it's very, very down the center sound.
Yeah.
Which works nice because we can then pan the keys to the left a little bit, which is kind of the way you see it in the room, and the guitar to the right a little bit. And it's a 4-piece band, so there you go.
Yeah.
And I think it actually, I'm not sure I'm going to change that much unless we really have something crazy we're trying to do that week from a panning perspective. So the rest of the inputs coming in here, I don't do any of the drums with the kind of the exception from a processing on the channel perspective, because those were coming in. I mean, we've got a little bit of compression coming in on the analog realm before it even gets here. So, yeah, we're processing things kind of crazy on that side.
Nice.
But most of it happens.
It all gets bussed together over here. Yeah, and this is where this is where the real work is happening over here.
Yeah, this is where I work during the show. And so I've got a single input control, right? This mouse that I'm running this on. And so it's important, that workflow of taking the mix, mixing it. Then I set some reference points for some of these levels between the songs. But another thing from a mix perspective, this is really a live concept mix, right? So if you're doing it live and you're trying to make a static mix that works for the most part everything, unless we're talking like automation, presets on consoles that we don't own. In a very structured show, you might be able to set all those things as a point that you can just automatically recall at the beginning of the song. I'm doing that manually, so I have to really kind of get that down to basic moves, right? So basic fader moves, mutes. And if I'm going to have a particular effects chain, then I'll have it on its own bus. I'll have it muted, and I'll mute and unmute based on what the song is.
Gotcha.
So that's what you're kind of seeing down here. A couple of different verb sounds. One that's kind of more of a mono plate. This is kind of a wider, something from the Capitol Chambers there. Had a vocoder on the last song in the last show. That was fun to do live.
Dude, I was playing around with this on a track last night. That vocoder, it's so much fun to use. It gets to be a really addicting sound. It's like, can I just do all my vocals through this just all the time?
Right. Yeah. And so we did that for the live mix, and it was great. And so actually I ended up doing a couple presets. One had more voices on from a harmony perspective than the other, because when you went into the ad-lib section, it was not as right on those notes. So
gotcha. I
switched to that. I'll have some preset, some plugins up and switch presets. I do that same thing down here on the delay, this has been my favorite delay for for all the things that we've been doing.
Yeah.
Just switching between that. I don't think I don't have the preset on
hit the
this
hit the
mix,
preset
but-
button on there, and
Oh yeah, right. Oh, sorry. Yeah, it was the other guy. Yeah, so I'm switching between what we're doing as a default for that episode versus the last tune there, and so I'll have that just as another thing that I can quickly change between tunes.
Yep.
And this guy is actually fun enough to actually play with these repeat guy live. I've done that.
Yep.
Yeah.
Get in there and
So,
get.
Rhett's got one. I've got one.
Uh-huh.
He's got a hardware
so
unit
the-
out there.
Yeah, I'm using on the first show I used a multi-vox multi-echo tape
Mhm.
delay through my guitar rig. And the other thing about the Echoplex is because we do have drum bleed coming through the vocal mic, you're getting some of that delay effect coming through the drums as well, which is super cool.
Yeah. Well, and Rhett, we're getting some people are asking about aux because you can see it. You see it during the show. How is the aux part of your signal chain for this?
Yeah, actually, it's a huge part of the signal chain. So I switch the amps out each show kind of for, to suit whatever sound and tone and feel I'm going for. But the aux stays consistent, and it's honestly a huge part because we have such a small room. I can't run an amp at full blast and trying to mic an amp and everything. It would be a nightmare. And because we're in a basement, I don't have a ton of space I don't have any ISO rooms or anything like that. So I'm running into the aux and utilizing basically all my guitar processing is I'm taking care of in the aux. If you notice on the guitar buses, there's basically nothing other than utility EQ. So I'm using, depending on what amp I'm using, what sound I'm using, I'm handling my EQ and compression in aux with the 1176 and with the EQ. And I spend a lot of time dialing in my aux presets for the show and what amp I'm using. So for the last show, I used a Dumble clone from Amplified Nation that I have on loan right now. And after our second rehearsal, I went through and kind of ran through my sounds and dialed in a cabinet setting, a mic setting, an EQ, and a 1176 setting, and saved it to a preset. So now what I have is for my different amps, like my Divided by 13, RSA 23, I've got a preset on aux for that amp. I've got one for the Dumble clone now. I've got one for the High Watt Custom 20 here.
Oh, nice.
It's huge, man.
It sounds like you. I think you get a lot of enjoyment out of that process, don't you?
I do. I'm very, very picky. Very picky. And so I spend a lot of time dialing in the guitar sounds with the aux.
So are you saving these as different rig presets? So then during the show, are you changing your rig preset?
No, not during show because I'm not changing amps.
Okay.
But I just save them. I find a sound that I like and I save them and go from there. And I am using a cabinet in the room, so I've got it attenuated. It's one step below the top, the least attenuation. And so I'm running through a cabinet just to have it. I like to feel the
a
air
little something.
moving.
Yeah.
And you do get a little bit of the guitar coming through the ambient mics in the room, which makes it feel more natural.
I mean, it's almost kind of like analog glue in that sense, right? Like you got drums bleeding into everything. You've got like having some of the guitar join that as well. It's just kind of sprinkling it all over everybody else's mics.
Exactly.
Yeah, and so we'll solo some stuff. You'll hear it. It's kind of interesting. The drum mix does not sound as cool without having the vocal mic on. So,
I bet. Yeah.
I mean, that's just kind of how it has to be. So we also have all these utility EQs, the fab filters up here. I'm actually using, I don't know if you got okay. So I've got that on my highlight.
I got to buy
But
that.
I'm also using, the compressor so this is kind of the live approach, right? So I end up having to put like almost a utility compressor at the end of the chain. So everything's working great, sounding good, average, and then all of a sudden something's louder. You don't have any control of that, right? It's not a controlled environment. We can't go adjust the clip so I have to have something to just kind of keep some things in check for, maybe something a little faster than's happening on some of this equipment up here. So,
nice.
Or just different level sets. So we have EQ and comp, 1176 and API on some keys here, which have really helped bring that out. We might end up with something on here on the guitar chain, YouTube likes to help you mix, so everyone would like to hear a little more Rhett, which I can agree with.
And there's a lot of armchair engineers watching the stream
right.
every single time.
Yeah.
I have no idea what you're talking about, guys. Never seen that happen. No.
Yeah. So and see, I'm mixing on ears, and it's like, hey, it sounds great to me. And then you're like, oh yeah, I can kind of see where they're coming from. Not all the way on this guy and this guy, but a little bit. Yeah. So I'll probably end up with something here just to kind of help mix it, right? So you need these things kind of mixing for you, and then you're gonna try to make the bigger moves that have to happen between songs, and that's kind of how I've approached live at the level I've been at with the consoles that I normally work with.
And I want to highlight here, because I feel like we skimmed over it. Andy is mixing the entire broadcast, the whole show, with a mouse.
Yeah, exactly.
He's doing everything with a mouse. So we have used that feedback button to kindly request control surface support, which I know you guys have you're working on it.
The feedback on that one's loud and clear, because especially for a scenario like this, right? That would be ideal to have an artist mix or console faders, some sort of control surface, something for making little moves and also big moves. Because I imagine, Andy, a big part of this is managing the effects and kind of getting from song to song, like you mentioned, changing presets, muting the vocoder, unmuting, balancing all these different things. You're as much of a performer as the guys out in the live room.
And I like to approach that, if this is a front of house mix at a venue, that person typically is part of the band from a performance perspective, especially if there's anything from a real-time effect going on, right? And specifically too from what you're being presented from the band, right? For what's interesting at the time and whatnot. So the idea is, well, we got to do that here too. And so what can we do? We got a little bit of limitation. This is how I set it up, right? I got buses to do it. I got mutes. I've got some notes on what I need to change where between what songs. I've got a talkback bus here that I'll unmute and mute the the main vocal, which has the effects on it. The talkback spill, by the way, is actually really useful.
Oh, I bet.
Because now I have here's my talkback mix right here, right, from everything that you just saw, which is nice. So I can, if I need to set some levels between it, it's coming off aux sends to the bus with no effects, right? No effects other than this compressor right here to try to keep things
hold it all together,
put together a little better,
yeah.
Because everyone has their own approach on where they're at or whatever we have talkback mic we have going on there. So
and then this also lets you bring in the Tilly and yourself, like this allows you guys to also add yourselves to the mix.
Right.
That's another good thing to know is that you can bring the talkback channel on the box. So I'm using the X4's talkback button and mic back on this channel here, this talkback channel, and that's routed into this bus. The only downside is now I've gotten to the delay where I got to pull an ear out, or I can't. I'm not coherent. There's the delay in what I'm hearing. So,
man, I've had to do a couple of these streams where there was a weird feedback loop happening with our Zoom guests, and I'm sure people at home can tell which ones it was, because I'm so taking the ear off and trying just making weird faces because I'm hearing myself a second later. It's very weird, right?
Well,
I find I can't finish words or sentences.
The talkback thing is really important for us because this is different from a typical live show in that we're live streaming. We don't have an audience, and this is you have to play to the medium. And the medium here is finding ways of interacting with the audience in real time, which is why we have my wife Tilly has a mic and a camera. Andy's got a mic and a camera. He's actually using the talkback in the X4 come through. And
nice.
Because we want to have that element of real time interaction with the fans and with the people that are watching and with each other. And so every musician has a mic, even though most of us aren't singing. And so we finish a song or a couple songs and we can kind of get together and chat, talk, and do all that kind of stuff,
Yeah, it's a really important part, because otherwise, especially having Tilly there monitoring the chat and being able to relay messages back to you guys between songs, having that connection with the audience has to always it has to come through a moderator, come through a producer, like what she's doing.
Yeah.
Nice. So drum bus, it's cool to see. With the drums, you were doing more processing up front on them, and then just got a little EQ. I see the Wolf compressor on there.
Yeah. That guy's, so we're doing some parallel there for sure. That for sure. And it's kind of doing more of the tape. I don't know what it's doing. It's cool, but it definitely has a tape aspect to it. So
yeah, it's a really funky box, and it's great that it has the wet dry, so you're able to just blend that in. Again, this that fits with the aesthetic sonically that you guys are going for. And then the API, I love the API vision, man. That's kudos on that choice, because that's one of my favorites. It's an all around. It kind of does a little bit of everything sort of plugin, right?
Yeah, and I'm trying to think what we're doing here. I think we're mainly using it for the EQ, and I don't know if the high pass. It's not on. Yeah, mainly the EQ.
Yeah.
I think it's and with the idea that if we needed any of these other knobs, if they come up, it works great. I find that's pretty. I'm using it on this mic right now. So.
Yeah, that's me too. This is the vision is that's the front end I love as well.
Yeah.
Nice. And then so yeah, a bunch of I mean, obviously you're focusing a lot on the vocals. It's like it seems like the vocals get the most amount of processing love. What's the what's your thought process behind the sound for the vocals?
Well, yeah, so it's definitely Portia has this pretty awesome vocal talent as well as keyboard talent. The whole idea, getting it right at the source, start with musicians like these guys, right? and they're amazing. And so he wants kind of an older school feel, like a classic Ray or even a Hendrix or something like that kind of feel. And so I found that the LA2A, we used kind of the LA2 up here on I think the first show, and then I've moved to this one for the past two. Let's see, and then we move into the Neve EQ. So that second one's not on. We a lot of this too has to do with the fact that we've got a lot of bleed in it, right? So we're trying
it's a pretty aggressive high cut going on there.
Yeah. But that still works with the vibe he's going for.
Yeah.
And so it all happens pretty well there. Boosting some low, that was by request. Jamie is an engineer as well, so he's like, hey man, I'm thinking about this and this. I was like, okay, let's see. Have you tried this plugin? I threw the DS on there, but I don't really need it. But I had it on there almost. I think it picks up a little more on some of the cymbal wash drum bleed on occasion than it does his actual voice, so that was kind of neat. This oxide works really well for the tone that we like. And so the 1 and 2, we use this, and it not only does it give the drive, it has some compression for sure built in. And so it kind of worked as kind of the last compressor in the chain. I did swap. You can see it's bypassed here. I did swap to the ATR 102 in this mix.
Yeah.
And so I've been playing around with getting the drive here, and this doesn't really compress like that. So that's why I ended up with another kind of utility like compressor just at the end to catch some of the peaks that we hadn't previously gotten. I'm going to play around with this more because there's some tones, there's some like really slow tape speeds that on here that I think might give even more of the vibe that he likes.
Oh, dude!
So I just have to
the 3 and 3, the 3 3/4, and the 7.5. And the cool thing, I'm sure you may have already discovered this, but when you go to those slower speeds, it actually unlocks different tape formulas too.
Yes, I found that, and I was real close to running some of those. So, and I'm sure they will show up on some future episodes. And the nice thing about this too is I can throw a preset up for that, and I can actually switch that vibe, between songs, which is part of the goal here, right? I mean, we're not necessarily just trying to create a static mix that's just going to work. This is as much of the creative sound as the instrumentalist, right, that are doing, and so we're trying to complement. Both ways with this.
Yeah, absolutely.
And one of the fun things here we also have in the chain is this MXR, using it in a flange mode. Turn it on and off.
I was going to say, do you leave that on the whole time, or is this just a special effect for some songs?
Just a special effect. So the last show, the Vultures tune, when he goes into a falsetto part, I turned that on. And the great thing about it is the drum bleed comes through. And so now you're getting a flange on the drums with the vocals.
Yeah.
It is super cool. And you may not hear it on your phone, but if you listen on something, a little more fidelity, it is a neat effect. And this works really well for that.
That's one of those sleeper plugins that it's been out for a while, so people sleep on it, but it's one of my favorite special effects on the UAD platform.
And in fact, our first show, I had this same plugin on his monitor, and I had them both up here, and I would just click them on and off because I could use the plugin that's on the record there, and actually control it through the same window here, which is nice.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, and so that works really well. Tip on that: if you're gonna use it for a live show, make sure it stays powered on and use the bypass button. All right, we're on the edge. We usually bring the satellite over for this. Use the bypass button that's built in with it not pulled out.
Yep.
From a DSP perspective, it
keeps it loaded, and it just kind of bypasses the processing.
You'll get some noise on the channel if you just turn a plugin on, like from a power on off versus like the bypass on and off within it. And so that's if I'm going to turn something on and off, that's the way I make sure I do it.
Yeah, and there's even like the ATR, you'll notice that too. The ATR, the big power button that's on up here in the channel, that fully turns it on and off. But actually, if you go into the settings for the ATR, there's a bypass button on the GUI. That's a similar thing where that's more of a soft bypass as opposed to a power on and off.
Right. Yep. And so what I did is I built this mix using that on these buses and the master in different combinations to where we got even more of a vibe that we were looking for. So I expect this will probably go forward, and this is going to be more special effect. This is more, just kind of sonic glue stuff, right? And we're not really driving as much on some of these buses other than the drums. I think the drums do get pushed some.
Yeah.
But part of what I was saying earlier about gain staging, you'll see there's some pretty heavy signals coming in. But up here on the Neve summing, this is a big part of the sound.
Yep.
You got to really watch with the signals that I have coming in. I have to turn back the headroom so it doesn't do too much.
Yeah.
And I'm doing that here on the vocal channel, and I'm doing it down on the main bus. The headroom and trim are very useful on this guy to getting that the way you want it to sound.
Yeah, I find myself doing the same thing, especially for the mix bus. Always opening up the headroom, because it's one of those things. It's a killer sound, but you have to just like if you're working with real analog gear, right? You have to be so much more sensitive to your gain staging, because you push in too hard, it'll start breaking it up, which can be a desired effect. But if it's not,
right,
you're either going back and adjusting your entire gain stage upstream, or the cool thing about the way both the Neve summing and the tape extensions work is that you do have that control over just going up there, open up the headroom, bring down the trim a little bit, and that can help kind of compensate for your gain stage.
Yes, absolutely. And I really had to do that on the main bus. When I switched to this, I was noticing it was just getting into it way too much. And, the idea of going and starting over at the beginning was not something that could happen at that point. And so this was a really nice feature to be able to just get that right back where I wanted it.
Nice. And what else you got on the mix bus?
Mix bus, yeah. So another just utility EQ. And I really like the results coming out of the massive passive here.
Yep.
And doing the kind of the little top end trick here with cut and boost. And what's nice about this, I'm even boosting things in frequency you wouldn't think you'd do on a master. Like here, this 270 little boost.
That's the mud. What are you
I know it seems so weird, but when I turn it up, I was like, oh, it actually sounds pretty good. It's like it doesn't do what you think it does, and I almost feel like this helps a little bit on translation on smaller devices. Oddly enough. Yeah. So I haven't really fleshed that out.
Yeah, it's like low mid energy, right? A lot of times it comes across as like fullness and thickness in a mix.
Well, and that's another part of our workflow too that we do. We should talk about if anybody out there is thinking about taking on a project like this. We typically will live stream our rehearsals or a dress run through to like a private link on YouTube. We had an incident with show 2 where YouTube freaked out and made our private live stream public, and about 1,000 people saw it before we caught it. But so we typically do a private live stream, and then we'll send that out to each member of the band and the whole production crew so we could reference it on different devices. So we'll watch it and listen to it on a phone. We'll watch it on a laptop. We'll pull it up on like a smart TV, listen to it in the car, so we can so Andy can kind of dial in the mix for, you're not going to make it perfect for every device, but you can kind of, do some things like this to make it kind of cut through a little bit more on a phone or an iPad, for example.
Yeah. Well, it's
Just
like
gives me an idea to reference a little. Yeah.
well, totally, and I mean that's such a 21st century way of going to listen to your mix in the car, with
Right.
an FM transmitter. No, I YouTube live stream it, and then I watch the
Yeah.
unlisted video.
Yeah.
Because
Seriously, that's what we're doing. And
there's
this
also
surprised
some
me.
things that happen with the YouTube compression, right?
Mhm.
Because we take very meticulous care of what we're sending YouTube with, obviously the mix and then the video side and getting everything right, so we can send YouTube the best thing possible. But then once it leaves this coax cable and hits the internet, it's out of our hands. And so I think we've learned a little bit watching those streams back. It's like, well, what we were hearing in the room, something is shifting because of YouTube's compression algorithms and streaming and things like that. So it's an interesting challenge for sure.
Yeah,
Oh, definitely.
So it evolves. So the Shadow Hills, mass comp here is I don't know. It's one of those things you turn it off and it's like, yeah, it's not as good. You turn it on, it's not fundamentally different. So I'll show that on the audio example, but it is much more cohesive, which I think is the goal. So I'm not doing anything particularly extreme with this, but the combination of that passive EQ and this, super nice. Precision limiter, literally this is the first thing I threw on, and that's probably why the gain staging could be better, because this thing is awesome.
Yeah.
You don't really know when it's working.
Right?
Yeah, so-
all of a sudden you open it up and you see it's reducing like 6 dB. You're like, oh, I'm coming in a little hot. All right.
Right. Yeah. So, and yeah, so we're I've got the TC radar for some monitoring, and I don't know if you were targeting maybe -14 for YouTube. I think we're like at 11 or something for the show, but it seems to be the volume we want, and so that's really kind of like, hey, you don't want to have to turn it all the way up on the phone, there still seems to be a bit of it's still got some dynamic range. We're happy with that, right?
Yeah, exactly.
And this can be our control for that if we need it. This is where we can kind of set that overall output level.
Nice.
Kind of important thing here, and this if you're doing this, and you may not, the first thing you're going to realize is that the monitor that's happening here, when you actually have this on monitor, is going to combine Luna and your console, right? And that is not what you want to do when you're doing what we're doing.
Yep, you want it to
So that was the first kinda like-
only be Luna going out to broadcast, not Luna plus
Right.
those raw inputs again.
Right, and even from my monitoring mixing is like, oh, I've got a kind of a big problem I got to solve here, and so I'd already solved it by sending this send out an analog output, right, at
Yep.
Unity. That's our mix to the switcher. The next thing I had to do for me to hear that mix is I actually just use my last cue,
Okay.
right, and so what I do down here, not that guy, but this guy, I just set the monitor to Q4. So now
gotcha.
in my headphones, I've got the mix from Luna and Luna only, and it's not the combination. And so this is a big tip if you're doing this. This works really well. I'm not sure you're going to find another way around. So maybe, but this worked great.
Nice.
So save a cue for that if you don't have it.
Yeah, absolutely, and that's a smart move there because the cues. The great thing about the cues is it's able to stay in the same latency path as the live inputs in that sense, right?
Well, in this case, it's I'm doing it off the main bus, and so it's in the same latency as this.
Oh, as the broadcast send.
Because as the broadcast,
Gotcha.
and that's what I'm mixing from. And the reason it is that way is because it's not in ARM mode, I would assume.
Yeah, gotcha.
And all these buses are live. If you were in ARM mode, then these buses you'd only be able to pick a couple for auxes.
Yeah.
So, all of these things we figured it out. As we fired it up.
Right, trial and error.
Right. And so being a new product, I think we've landed on something that works really well. We have a nice workflow process. We have now the ability to do the creative aspect that we all really wanted to do as our goal at the beginning. And technically it functions, and Luna's stable for the broadcast, and gives them some portability between just working on the project. It's really working out really nice.
Yeah, and so it's interesting as you guys are talking about, so like the pre-production part of your show of doing a stream, and then Andy, you mentioned that so you'll record the rehearsal, and then you take that Luna session back home and mix it or tweak the mix, and kind of you're building up the mix, and then all you do essentially, right, is bring that session file back and then go to air now with your modified session that's based on the songs and the new whatever changes you guys have made for the week are now integrated into the Luna session that you bring back and are then performing through for the broadcast.
Yep, that's absolutely right. And it's the way we wanted to do this from the beginning, and this allows us to do it.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
So and there's just all these extensions are a lot of the sound that we really like from Luna. Right?
Yeah.
And
Well,
they're kind of the secret sauce there.
man, we've been teasing people this entire time, showing them all
All right,
this
yeah.
cool stuff. Let's hear some. I'd love to hear some stuff. Obviously, people can go over to Rhett's channel and watch the entire broadcast to get the full effect. But us audio nerds here, man, I want to hear some stuff in solo.
Yeah, let's do that. All right.
Do I need to stop? Oh, you got it. Okay.
Yeah, I got it.
Yeah.
Okay.
I have the
It's in
power.
control. Just gotta find this. There's the share button.
Oh man, I thought I saw Dan Derlo in the chat earlier.
I did. Yeah, he came in
Yeah.
and said, "What's up?"
Yeah, Dan. We're actually using one of his DIs for the synth bass channel.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Okay. Can y'all see that?
Yep, we can see it.
Yep.
All right. So my screen doesn't have the resolution of that nice iMac that Rhett has there. So we can scroll around if we need to.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, let me just give you a little bit of the section of the song we're listening to, and then we can kind of go back and
Yeah, so
check
we'll
out
hear
the
the
pieces.
whole thing all put together and then kind of break it down.
All right.
One thing I can tell you is you got to be free. Come together right now.
Yeah.
I love that
So,
you can
nice-
hear the yelling in the background
Yeah.
too. Like everyone's just so hype in the room.
Yeah.
And that's the band, right? There's no
Uh-huh.
other people. I mean, other than Tilly and Glenn, and I think they're pretty. I mean, I don't know. I can't see Tilly. I think they're pretty heads down. So
Yeah.
yeah.
We get into it and start. It progresses to the point where we're basically screaming at one another, and it's the boom mics and the drum mics picking us up. So
I love it. But yeah, man, it is such a cool, very saturated sound, especially like you notice on the hi-hats, right? Like hi-hats have got this like kind of swishing around, but they're not grabbing your ears out. They're not harsh or anything.
Yeah. So interesting about that. This was the first show where we switched to some new cymbals, and I actually didn't have a chance to incorporate those into my mix, sonically. So it was just a change. All right, let's see what we got. And I am finding I was actually pushing the drums up a little bit because I didn't have as much wash. They're I don't know if you recall what they are, right? But they're like a super dry special or
yeah,
something like
I don't.
that.
I'm a guitar
Zildjian.
player, so forgive me, drummers that are watching. It's there's Zildjian super dry something. I like them.
Yeah.
They sound super trashy and dry. They're cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. So this is just the drum bus. So
Dude, the kick and the chunkiness of that kick and snare are like it's huge.
yeah, it's like I think it's like an 18-inch kick too, or something like that, or 20. It's yeah,
Not
and so
huge,
he's
yeah.
got it. So yeah, and so Chet's got him tuned really well, nice and open, and and really kind of trashy cymbals to give you part of that sound without being overwhelming, which you mentioned is really nice. Yeah, and so that. Yeah, it's just from the processing here and some of that Wolf. But I've complemented that with even more of the ATR 102 extension
Yeah.
on the last show, which I think is actually even better.
Nice.
Let's see. Here's the room, just for example. Yeah, so very clean. You know, a lot of drums mostly, but then you got a little of that ambiance. So, and it's actually a wider. So
I was gonna say, yeah, that's super wide. And the cool thing, the advantage of doing this, right, with a smaller group, like you're not dealing with 20 different players up all in one room here. You've got like 4 or 5 musicians at a time. So making that sound larger than life, it's all about tucking these things away on the left and right side to really give you some stereo image while being able to keep vocals, drums, keeping a lot of stuff very center focused for impact.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, so bass. Let's see. I don't know there's much bass there, huh?
And so is that the bass?
That's
it's a DI, and then are you dirtying it up all in the box, or is he dirtying it up on his side?
No, that is a Ampeg tube amp.
Uh-huh.
With some front end. I think he's got some pedals there.
It's the Rin and Cuff. It's fat fuck with a PH. So that pedal, it's germanium boost. And yeah, we're miking up the bass amp, and also a part of his sound too is the bass that Phil's using. It's a Fender JMJ signature. So it's Justin Meldal Johnson signature. I think it's the Bronco, short scale. I believe he's got flats on it. So it's short scale, super punchy, super mid-rangey.
Yeah.
Very much that like Black Keys kind of bass sound. I love it.
Oh yeah. It cuts through too. So it's thick, but it also cuts, which is kind of what bass players are always looking for.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm getting a really nice signal from him. So we're miking that Ampeg with his chain, and he's using some drive on the amp too, for sure, to get that with an RE20 into a hardware distressor into here. So
gotcha.
I got the decapitator on here. It's not doing too much. It's giving a little vibe to that, but not needed. And I think it was like some low boost here, which why not?
That's a good trick though for people who are doing saturated bass, right? Sometimes what you end up kind of losing or maybe blowing out in a way is the actual low frequency content, right? So I find myself doing the same move of often after kind of getting the bass tone, getting to speak, coming back in with something like that, like 60 hertz, something on that real low end, and adding back that low end kind of the sub bass aspects of it.
Yeah, and so this is, we're using these fab filters as more of our utility, and this is where we're kind of, just sculpting between the different elements of the mix. I think probably one down on the kick too. Just try to get those to sit pretty good.
Nice.
I don't think there's any. I'll show the piano in the solo section.
And so are you doing, I see you've got Nord, Rhodes, piano, synth keys, and then you've got a keys bus. So are you kind of busing into a bus? Yeah.
Correct. Yeah. Yeah. And you get, like I say, from gain staging, it's, I don't know, maybe when we move it all, Rhett, we'll start over.
Yeah. So we're starting to, because my wife and I are in the home buying process right now. And this show, is something we're going to be doing for the next, foreseeable future, several years. So this is going into our home buying thought process, buying a home that has a space that we can do a studio build in for Backstage Live and for my YouTube channel, all that stuff. But so with that in mind, Andy and I are already starting to kick around what does version 2.0 of the setup look like, and
more complicated. I'm guessing I'm foreseeing more complicated.
Probably.
Well, I don't know. We'll see. If we can keep it going, bigger, maybe.
Bigger, exactly.
Okay, we'll see. So bus to bus, you got to watch out with some of the gain staging there, but it seems to be under control. Just some synths. I use the synth verb. I send the piano and the synth keys there. The synth keys is some Moog, and I run that into the Lexicon, I think 480, with the random halls. That was your tip, Ben.
Yeah,
one of your videos. Yeah, pretty awesome. Very subtle what I'm doing here, but if you crank it on one of the synth parts or something, it's kind of just what it needs. So
yeah, totally.
So that works nice, and Interesting thing too with the panning is you got to be a little. I'm keeping the bus all the way open, and then I'm just using the pans of the actual buses to that to give it a little bit of space for some of those. So
yeah, and it's just a little tilt, right? You're just kind of yeah. I don't know if you Andy, if you maybe you've run into this, but there's kind of a secret pan pot in Luna for stereo tracks.
Okay.
If you right click on the pan pots, and you'll see there's an option for simple pan.
Right click. Does it work on the bus?
It should. Right clicking or left clicking? It should pull up like a menu.
Oh, right click.
Yeah.
That's it? No, that's
No. No, it should. There's a little thing that comes up and says simple pan. Maybe it's on the track name. Oh, there it is. Maybe it's not on the bus.
So
it might just
not
be
work
on
the bus.
Yeah, it may just be on the tracks. But simple
What does
stereo
that do?
pan.
Oh, okay.
It basically
Yeah,
just
okay.
combines the two pan pots together and then allows you to do that tilt,
Yeah.
which is kind of a handy control. Yeah, maybe it is just on audio tracks, not on buses yet.
Well, add it to the list.
Feedback. Hit the smash that feedback
you go.
button.
Feedback button.
Nice. Yeah. Yeah, so that's what we're doing on keys. This is an acoustic guitar that's not on this track. This is a guitar that's from the guest that's not on this track. They hadn't joined yet. Here is Rhett's guitar. Yeah, lots of vibe there.
Oh yeah.
Gotta love the rotary, man.
And there's a question there in the chat, Rhett, asking what you're using for pedals for the show.
Yeah, so I have right now I've got a board built by Mason Marangella from Vertex Effects, so that's got what you just heard was a rotary from the Strymon Mobius drive from a Mythos Olympus, and that was going into my RSA 23 from Divided by 13. I'm in the process right now of working out a new pedal board for just this show because each show is so different sounding. I want to have a board that's more open that I can kind of quickly throw stuff on and change my setup for each show, which is not really that easy to do with this current setup. So there'll be a video to come on that probably.
Nice. Well, man, that's I just gotta say that's kind of the really cool part about the way you're doing this stuff is like you're trying things in real time and then able to kind of share that in video form and kind of bring people along that journey with you.
Yeah, I mean the overall kind of theme behind this idea now is like, for better or for worse, the live streaming concept I think is going to be a part of live music for a long time to come, and I feel like we were a little bit ahead of the curve because of my experience and time spent on YouTube, and then the collective experience of everybody in this group, and specifically Andy, to be able to put on a really high quality live show from home. And so for us, we just want to continue to keep doing it and growing it, and when we can start to play out live again, take this band out and play live. But I think this live stream show will always be a core element of what we do here, and I'd like to see more people start doing it, man, honestly.
Yeah. Oh, dude, I've got a huge playlist on YouTube now of just all my favorite live shows. The amount of people and bands that have been publishing, like Radiohead for a while was just releasing live show after live show, and it's kind of a peak time to be able to get great live music via YouTube.
Yeah, for sure.
Nice. Cool. So let's check out. Love to hear what that vocal sounds like.
Yeah, so here's just the vocal by itself.
One thing I can tell you is you got to be free. Come together right now, yeah, for me.
You can hear the bleed.
Yeah. Oh no, I didn't hear it at all. What bleed are you talking about?
So, before we go to the effects I have on that, check this out.
One thing I can tell you, be free. Come together right now, yeah.
I think half my snare and cymbal sounds coming from that mic.
I was gonna say it definitely completes the snare sound. Like it kind of adds that last bit of presence to the snare, without it sounding distant, right? Which I guess is probably mainly a function of how close everybody is together. It's not like they're 20, 30 feet away from each other.
Yeah, we are very close. It's also a really nice mic, and it's a condenser. So the response on it, right?
Yeah.
Transient response on it is very good. So I think that's part of the reason why that actually works so well.
Totally.
So here's the vocals with, let's see, we were doing this verb and then this delay.
One thing I can tell you is you got to be free. Come together right now, yeah. For me.
Which that delay in the snare is cool too, right?
Yeah. So, it's kind of like a slap, right? Essentially, you got kind of a real short delay line on that. But 150, nice.
Yeah, and then if I really want more, I can do it there. And I mean, we did some longer delays on some of the other shows, but that was the little shorter one on that one.
Yeah, it's such a good. So good. Dude, the EP34, man, that's such a go-to.
Yeah, when I found it, I was like, that's it. It's the one. And so and the fun thing is, like, we just you gotta embrace the bleed, right? Like any kind of thing. And now like even that verb, this EMT plate, is now kind of the drum verb. Not that we really needed it, but it's there, right? So everything kind of comes together, and obviously when you're mixing, you're aware of all these things. So
yeah. Nice. And then so Noah was the guest vocalist for episode 2. So you just kind of setting up slightly different chains for different vibes, right?
Yeah, I can show you a little bit of that. Let's see. So, in fact, I think I had a different delay. I think it was that guy right there. So this is the sort of things that I'm doing between the songs, right? So I'm muting Jamie. Typically, there's a talkback to do. The Noah box is unmuted there. The snares swap.
Yep.
Okay. And usually I think the drums came back a little bit. I'm trying to do this off memory a little bit. Don't think there was as much piano. And there was probably a little more guitar. And it was something like that. Right. And let's see.
I was about to be curious if you markered the entire session. I was like, wow.
No. Didn't have that kind of time. Let's see what we got here.
Working from Chevron to 11 every night. Really makes my life a drag. I don't think that's right. Really been the best of fools. I did what I could, yeah. 'Cause I love you, baby, how I love you, baby, how I love you, darling, my beloved little girl, my little girl. But baby, since I've been loving you, yeah, I'm about to lose my worried mind. Oh yeah.
Yeah.
So kind of completely different.
Phenomenal, man. Dude, it sounds so sick over here. Like the presence and the vibe on everything, the balance is incredible. The vocal is just outstanding though. Wow.
Yeah. So and we were going for a different feel, right? So, different songs, different singers. That mic, interestingly enough, does not have as much bleed.
Working from Chevron to 11 every night.
So it's twice as far from the drums, other side of the room.
Yeah.
and we're actually using the 314, which is a cardioid pattern. And literally just threw this guy up there.
Yep.
And nothing there. And I think I've got a little EQ on the Helios here.
Little top in there.
Yeah, and that was it.
Wow.
And some effects, and it was great. So
we should also shout out that for those of you out there who aren't familiar, that's Noah Guthrie. Noah is an unbelievable singer songwriter. A guy I've been playing with for almost 10 years now. He's also got a YouTube channel, so you guys can go check him out. But it's working with a guy like that who's a pro vocalist is it's easy,
Right? But
Right.
surprise, when they're really great
yeah.
singers, they get really easy to make sound good. I never would have guessed.
And this channel, I mean, it went straight into clipping, I think, several times, and to the point where, like, it kind of fits the vibe. So and not in that segment per se, but it really, like, so we definitely saturated in the compressor here, and maybe in this guy too. I'm sure we hit digital clip, and it wasn't so bad that I had to be like, all right, we got to fix it. It was just like, all right, just write it. So,
we're not going for clean and polished again here.
yeah.
No, absolutely.
Not
But
our
it-
vibe.
But actually, what would be really cool to hear, Andy, is hear that mix back there. I would love to hear the impact that the Neve summing's having on the whole mix.
Yes, we can do that. I was trying to find a way to turn it all on and off at once, and I couldn't figure out. Exactly
option click on the in and out should bring them. The only one that it gets weird with is the main. So option click for all of the other ones. Is that not working?
I'm trying it. It seems to be a bus thing. I don't know. It's so weird. I thought it only worked on buses. So
We'll try. Let's try selecting all the buses so they're all in selection grouping, and then that might also help.
yeah, I tried that too.
Yeah,
So that's on.
That's on.
Selected. Yeah, I was hoping to do that. I can just flip them all off if it's
Yeah, we got a few seconds.
okay. All right. So, hold on. Let me just see where things are at here. Yeah. Okay. So,
So let's hear it with it on first before we go
right,
to the
sure.
adventure. Turn it off. So this way. So try to hold the sound in your mind, everybody, because we'll hear it before and after Neve summing on this mix.
Working from Chevron to 11 every night. Really makes my working from Chevron to 11 every night. Really makes my life a drag.
still good, but needs some work.
Yeah. I'm missing that
You know,
that
like-
relationship between the kick and bass. Now it's
It lets everything kind of pull apart, right? Like
Yeah.
you feel the distance between the tracks much more. Now back on.
Working from Chevron to 11 every night.
I mean, and so that's why we went with Luna. Honestly,
Yeah.
it actually happened just that way.
Right?
it really did. Yeah, early on we were kind of kicking around, like before the first show we were still in the setup process, and we were considering different DAWs that would allow us control surface or other things, and we went back, we're like, well, hold on, before we move away, let's try it without the Neve summing. And Andy and I both were sitting right here, and we turned it off, and both of us looked at each other and said, okay, well, we have to use this. We can't.
Yeah. Well,
we can't
that
not
seals the
have
deal.
this. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and
And
it
it really does. It helps mix it. I mean, it starts to mix it, right? You go from there.
Well, that's been the big thing that everyone, and I'm sure you're discovering this too with the ATR of, like, all these Luna extensions. They're things that so many of us, like, we kind of, our mixes lived without these for so long, and then now that you start using it, you're like, it does half the work for you. That's kind of the big advantage, is it's doing a lot of the things that you have to bust things together and apply, individual processing. It just kind of gets taken care of now that you can, kind of add that touch of saturation on a group level and on a main bus level, and same with the tape. Like, it's giving you this head start on your mix.
Yeah,
absolutely. And I find the Neve really does that in a pretty subtle most of the time, at least the way I like to use it. And then the tape, the ATR, I was using it for the subtle and then the effects, right? Replacing the plugin I was using on Jamie's vocal for that drive, and I'm sure I'll continue down that path too for some interesting sounds.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, anything else in this session that you feel like we want to touch on, or anyone in the chat, if there's something that we haven't shown you guys yet that you really want to see, speak now or forever hold whatever. We're not getting married today. But yeah, anything else that you feel is really noteworthy that you'd love to show off to people?
I think we about covered it.
Yeah, I mean, it feels pretty good. I mean, there's a nice solo section here. Yeah, that sums it up.
Yep, you can hear it. We're all making that same noise.
It's all about that octave fuzz, man. That's the secret weapon. I use that on everything.
Right. Well, actually, I did remember a question I wanted to ask. Everyone's wearing masks. So, Andy, did you have to take that into consideration at all, that everyone's kind of covered up and speaking through masks for the show?
It's so funny. When we had, I feel like we had even more bleed at one point, and it was even harder. And when we controlled some of it, we got it to it was usable. That problem went away a little bit. And yeah, see, I had this boost right here. This was kind of my unmasking that was helping out a little bit. And through the other processing we ended up doing and all the other, physical in the room things we changed, it wasn't as necessary, and it was actually bringing out more drums that I needed. Yes and no. I'd love to have that unmasked plugin, right? By the end of this, we're probably gonna have a mask plugin, so I want that mask sound.
Yeah, exactly. It's gonna become the new sound.
Yeah. It's less of a sonic filter sometimes. At least the ones we're wearing are a little thinner. But it just gets caught like performance, like and it sort of kind of vibrate and almost in the lips, and that's where it becomes something I can't do anything about. But yeah.
How about,
it's definitely it's less than ideal, but we're being responsible and paying attention to the science, and what the science is telling us to do right now is wear masks and stay socially distanced. So that's what we're going to do, and it makes everyone feel safe in the room while we're together. And the thing is, in the time between shows and rehearsals, we're all off doing different things, so it's just the safest way to go about it.
Oh, totally. Yeah, you don't want to. There's nothing is worth risking that over, right? Like, no matter how, even maybe it looks better. Okay, yeah, you can see people smiling and whatever, but like, the risk is not worth what it is. Yeah. And that's it, man. It is. Yeah. Go ahead.
I was gonna say, absolutely agree. And then sonically, don't let that to be the deterrent, right?
Yeah.
Because, look, we're okay. And we're doing okay there. So
totally.
While we're gonna love it when we don't have to have them for lots of reasons. It's the right move, and it sounds fine.
Yeah, it does. Well, it sounds more than fine, Andy. This sounds
yes.
You guys are absolutely crushing it. Like, so cool to see the quality that you guys are able to do, and I'm really excited, because you guys don't just rest on your laurels. You're continuing to push it further and further. So I'm really excited to see where you guys take this next. So speaking of that, when do you guys have another show coming up?
Yep, October 10th is the next show. And right now we're doing these about once a month, and season 1, I think, will wrap up towards the end of the year. So we'll have October, November, December. So October 10th is the next show. and we always try and encourage people to catch it live. I mean, it stays up on my YouTube channel in perpetuity, but it's way more fun to catch it live in the moment.
Yeah.
And so we've got some cool stuff planned. We're going to try and get a couple of guests on for this season. We're going to try some stuff. I think we're going to try a concept instead of a concept album. I think we're going to try a concept show that'll have some visual elements, some sonic elements that all tie together, where the whole point of this is to have as much fun as possible and to do things that we can pull off here that would be much harder to pull off on tour or on a live show. Because we're not mobile, because we're, we can come and play in the same place every time. It affords us the opportunity to do some cool stuff. So yeah,
well, that's awesome, man. Well, yeah, can't wait to see what you guys are doing next. And for anyone tuning in that hasn't already gotten a chance to check this out, head over to Rhett's YouTube channel. That's the best place to find all of his content, and especially these live shows, which are up there right now. And Andy, any place you'd like to, are you on social media or anything that you'd like, if people want to reach out and ask you, start bugging you for questions about how to do this setup?
Yeah, no problem. So Andy Mac Studios, Instagram there, Andy McDonald on Facebook. So yeah,
I'm sure Rhett's bugging you to start your own YouTube channel. I hear he does that to people.
Yeah, if you hang out with me for too long, I'm going to become a bit of an evangelist. Hey man, have you thought about a YouTube channel?
Yeah.
Awesome.
Nice. Well, guys, thank you so much for coming on and sharing all the insights of your setup, playing on some clips, and really kind of giving people a bit of a beacon for what's possible with live streaming and using console and Luna with incredibly awesome, really cool setup that it's not complicated for being complicated. It's complicated for great results, and it really both for the musicians in the room and for the people at home who get to experience it. You can definitely tell the quality is coming across really, really well. So kudos to you guys, and can't wait to see what you guys do down in the future as well.
Well, thanks, man, and it's been really great working with you guys specifically. It's like the support has been awesome. Because we are pushing Luna in a direction that wasn't originally designed for, and you guys have been really cool about helping us work out issues and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, it's been awesome.
Hell yeah. Well, great. Well, guys, thank you so much for hanging out with us today. Thank you, everybody at home, for tuning in and checking this out. We're going to be back next week. We're back on Monday with Office Hours, Tuesday with the a special Tales from the Switch episode highlighting the Spitfire strings and woodwinds collections. We're going to be adding a string and horn arrangement to Lewis's song that we've been working on here for the last couple of months. So looking forward to a couple of great shows and a very special broadcast happening Thursday and Friday next week. You'll be seeing an email coming out about that tomorrow. So stay tuned to your inboxes for a real special announcement for what we got going on next week. And in the meantime, everybody have a great weekend. Stay safe. See y'all next time.